won the battle. Absalom was killed. David's forces won. And two servants, two messengers, runners, if you please, had the message. So they got that message, and the fellow had his message. One was named Cushai, and one was named Ahimaaz. Ahimaaz said, Cushai, I'm faster than you are. I'm the fastest messenger the king has got. And Cushai said, I know it, but I'm going to carry the message. And so Ahimaaz, he took off running. He got to David and said, King David, I'm faster than Cushai. David said, fine. What's the message? Oh, he said, message? Message? Oh, yeah, what's the message? Well, he said, I'm the fastest messenger you got. That's the message. But he said, well, how is it back in Jerusalem? Is my boy safe? Is Absalom safe? How is it back? I'm the fastest runner. I got here before he did. Crazy fool forgot what the message was. Dr. Billings and I have the same problem, don't we, sometimes? We get running so fast we forget where we're going. Like the fellow lost his memory and said, Doc, I've lost my memory. I said, how long have you had this problem? He said, what problem? And here came old Cushai up. Cushai is a slow, plodding kind of fellow, but he gets the job done. He didn't win the race, but he had the message. And he brought the message that Absalom was dead. You know the touching story where David said, oh, Absalom, my son Absalom, would God I had died for thee, oh, Absalom, my son. But Absalom's dead. Now then, David's forces are victorious. And they ask a question. Why say you not a word of bringing the king back? Uh-oh, the king is coming back. The king is coming. The king is coming. The king is coming. The king is coming. He had been over here in Mahanaim, but back yonder the war is over, and now the king can go back on his throne. And so King David comes back to Jerusalem, and those 600 Philistines are mighty proud fellows. They stood by him, aren't they? And so they come back to Jerusalem. David comes back, and guess who meets him? Shimei. Oh my. Oh my. Shimei comes to meet David, and there's the king, and there's Shimei, and the king looks at Shimei, and Shimei looks at the king, and those lips that once had cursed King David were now begging for mercy, and those hands that once had thrown dust on King David are now pleading for mercy. Oh my! Shimei said, "I didn't know the king was going to come back. I didn't know that. I thought he was gone. I thought he was unpopular. I thought his number was up. And oh my, I've got to face the king." And Shimei looks face to face with the one he had cursed. And then there's Mephibosheth. Oh my. Mephibosheth, the king is coming. The king is coming. The king is coming. Oh my, the king is coming. Oh, I wish I'd have stayed with him. I wish I'd have gone. I wish I hadn't stayed at home. I thought Absalom was going to win. I put my money on the wrong horse. And I thought Absalom... That's in the Hebrew, fellas. You won't find that in the English. That's in the original language. I put my money on the wrong horse. And I didn't know. The king is coming, Mephibosheth. The king is coming. The king is coming. The king is coming. The king is... Oh, my. My. And Mephibosheth looks in the face of the king whom he had deserted. Mephibosheth looks in the face of the one who had taken him from Lodebar and the poor country and placed him at the table of the king as one of the king's sons and given him an inheritance like a king's son. And Mephibosheth had turned his back on him and wouldn't go beside him. And now Mephibosheth faces the king and he's embarrassed to face him. And there's somebody else. Amasa faces the king. Amasa faces the king. The king is coming, Amasa, you that have rebelled, you that have led David's army and now have defected over to Absalom's army. Hey Amasa, the king is coming, the king is coming, the king is coming, the king is coming. Oh my, Amasa says, I didn't expect him back. I didn't think he'd come back. I thought he was gone for good. I didn't know it. The Bible says that Joab, one of David's servants, walked up and said, "Let me kiss you, Amasa." Amasa didn't know that he had a sword in his hand, and as he placed a kiss on the cheek of Amasa, His sword went through the fifth rib and the blood gushed out. And the Bible says that right on the highway, Amasa wallowed in his own blood. And they came and drug him off the highway and laid him beside the highway and put a garment on him, and he died. Why? Because when the king was gone, he didn't fight for the king. When the king was gone, he was ashamed of the king. When the king was gone, he fought against the king and the king's forces. Somebody else comes to meet the king. The king is coming, Ziba. Hey, Ziba, the king is coming. Oh, boy, the king is coming. I'm sure glad I stood for him. Man alive, they tried to talk me out of it, but I wanted to stand beside him. Hey, the king is coming. Hello, Your Highness. Hello, Your Highness. Welcome back to the throne. And David brings him back and gives him a place of honor. Hey, 600 Philistines, the king's coming back. The king is coming. The king is coming. The king is coming. The king is coming. No, 600 men. Say, blessed be God. Woo, we're glad we stayed beside the king. We thought the king would come again. We thought the king would come back. And now that he's back, thank God, we stood for the king. Can't you picture that first night or first day when the king walks back up the stairway to the throne of Israel? And King David sits on the throne he had vacated a while ago. And those men, 600 men outside the palace, walking guard with pressed uniforms and shine boots and glistening sabers. Don't you imagine what they talked about that first day? I bet you one of them said, man, oh man, I'm sure glad we stuck with the king, aren't you? Boy, poor old Amasa's watering in his own blood out there in the highway. I'm sure glad we stuck with the king. The other one says, man alive, I am too. Boy, you know, it's pretty tough sticking beside the king. Folks called us fanatics, and they cursed us, and they laughed at us. But as they walk outside the palace, as they walk guard with their sabers listening, they said, boy, it's better now, isn't it? Boy, aren't you glad we took the criticism? And aren't you glad we stuck with the king when he wasn't very popular? And aren't you glad we stayed with the king when folks were cursing him? And those 600 men in their uniforms and back, and the king's on the throne, and now they're in charge. And they're glad they stood with the king. Hey, our king's gone too. Our king is gone too. He was here. He walked the shores of Galilee. He walked the sandy trails of Judea. He opened eyes that were blind and ears that were deaf. He caused the lame to jump like a hart, the dead to live, the blind to see. He stilled the waters and calmed the waves. He blessed little children. He healed the sick. He proved he was God's Son. But he went away. He's not on his throne today. He's at the right hand of the Father. At the right hand of the Father's throne. The throne in Jerusalem is still empty. The king is gone. The king is gone. He's not very popular today while he's gone. And there's a battle raging concerning the king's forces and the forces of the devil. Hey, how are you standing? Huh? Are you a Shimei-ite? Are you cursing the king? Through your lips does there flow filthy, vile language about the God who made you and the Son of God who died to save you? Let me say this, ladies and gentlemen. If that's what you're doing, you will not be happy when the shout comes through the heavens. The king is coming! The king is coming! And blessed be God, the king is coming! He said, if I go away, I will come again. The king is coming. Let the heathen hear it. The king is coming. Let the tavern keepers hear it. The king is coming. Let the red light district hear it. The king is coming. Let the communists hear it. The king is coming. Let the hippies hear it. The king is coming. Let the drunkard hear it. The king is coming. Let the dope addict hear it. The king is coming. The king is coming. The king is coming. And in that day when he comes, those of you who've not stood by him as Mephibosheth did, refused to stand beside the king, you will say, oh my, oh, I didn't know he was coming. I thought old Hyles was a nut. I thought the fundamentalists were all screwballs. I didn't know he's coming. Oh, in that day, God's people who've not stood by the king at work, who've not stood with the king at school, who've not stood for the king at play, who've not stood for the king in the world while he was gone, will be ashamed when he comes again. Oh, let me say, you men on the job, you stand with the king. When he's unpopular, stand by him. When they curse Him, stand by Him. You young folks at college, heathen colleges, where the king is laughed at and his book is mocked, stand by Him. Don't deny the King. You folks in play and at work and at school, wherever you are, stand up for Jesus, ye soldiers of the cross. Back yonder, years ago, when the wicked infidel Thomas Paine was making ravages of Christianity, or trying to, with his infidelity and his paganism and atheistic lectures, he stood in a Midwestern state one night to speak. And as he spoke, 5,000 people or more listened to every word. He was a great orator. As that atheist Thomas Paine swayed the crowd, trying to make mockery of the Bible, trying to disprove the existence of God and laughing at the blood of Christ, he proved to his own satisfaction and to that of others that there was no God.